Welcome. You are here for advocating for your child's needs. Specifically, we're going to focus today on challenging behaviors. You can go to us. We are your presenters today. My name's Jamie Lassane Spears, and I'm the Family Engagement Specialist at Childcare Answers. I have a little one who is 10 months old, which is very exciting. She's crawling all over the place. And then also, I've been a preschool teacher for a few years, and I've also have about 12 years experience just in the field of early childhood in general. So I am excited to be here and to hopefully be a resource for you today. And then Lauren, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Lauren George. I am our family support specialist. I have two kiddos at home. I have a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old. And then I have over 10 years of infant toddler experience, both in the classroom and supporting classroom teachers. All right. And then here is a look at our resource center. So you can go to our website at childcareanswers.org, and there are tons and tons and tons of tools available to you for free. There are several articles on managing and supporting behaviors and talking to your child's teachers about behaviors. So check that out. And Childcare Answers is part of a larger network of childcare resource and referral agencies in the state. So we serve Hendricks, Hamilton, and Marion counties, but there is an agency in every county. And so if you are outside of our 3 counties, so we can provide a warm handoff to the agency serving you.
Okay, great. So we're going to start today just by thinking about what an advocate is. So what does it mean to be your child's advocate? Advocacy really is about promoting and defending another person's rights and needs. For me, advocacy for my child looks like paying attention to things that they might not even notice, like inside the classroom or with the interactions they're having with other children or even other adults, and just paying attention and knowing when I need to step in and say, hey, that's not okay, or hey, you might need a little bit more help here. That's advocacy for me. Does anyone else have a strong feeling towards what advocacy means for you and your child? Feel free to champion your child's needs. Yep, absolutely, Tom. To really just being there for their needs and to make sure that other people see them too. Well, there will be times when our children will need us and will need us to speak up for their rights and interests and needs. And then there's also times where we might feel like we need to do it, but we don't really need to. But as their advocate, we may need to find out information from a bunch of different people, whether it's your child's teacher or even a pediatrician. Sometimes you'll need to share information with people or even just collaborate with their teachers just to learn more about how you can best serve your child at home, and then how your teachers and caregivers can help your child at school. So advocacy really begins with just communicating and asking your child questions and just really inquiring about their day. There's a picture of a child in the car because I feel like one of the best places to do this is on the car ride home. Some children feel like that's a little overwhelming, and maybe it best helps to do it after the day is done, maybe right before bed when they've had time just to unwind. But that decision is up to you on when you really just talk to your child to see how their day went and what happened during their day. You'll really learn as your child gets older what the best time of day is for your child. But the idea is just to ask them questions on a regular basis every day. Maybe questions like, what did you like best about school today? And this is something you can do for your preschoolers and school agers, more so than your infants and toddlers. But you can ask them things like, what was easy to do today? Or what was something that was really hard to do today? Or something that was difficult? Or maybe even what was something that like hurt your feelings? Could be a question if you notice that they get in the car and they're a little bit more sad. when you ask more direct questions, you're going to get better answers from especially your preschoolers. Because when you ask how your day went or what did you do today, it's such an abstract concept to them because they're still learning that concept of time. So if you ask something more specific, like what did you build at blocks, they're going to tell you, oh, I built a castle, or oh, I built so such and such. And that will lead to more and more questions and more answers where you can start talking about some of their social interactions. Now, infants and toddlers are a little different. Lauren, do you want to share a little bit about them?
Yeah. So some things that I ask my kiddos before I go into infants and toddlers when they're not wanting to share information is like, tell me the funniest thing that happened today or the silliest thing, because they're more inclined to share something funny. And then once you've opened up that conversation, then you can ask about like, what was the best part of your day? What was the worst part of your day? What was hard? What was easy? Who did you play with? And then those more targeted questions. For infants and toddlers, especially those who are not yet verbal or don't have the verbal skills to have a whole full-blown conversation, assess kind of like what they look like when you drop them off and then when you pick them up. So do they look like they've been taken care of? Do they look like that they've had a fun day? I love picking my kiddos up from school and seeing them covered in paint, because then I know that they played really well that day. Kind of assess their mood, assess how they interact with their caregivers at drop off and pick up, and then assess their look to see if their basic needs have been taken care of. Drop off and pick up is just a snapshot of your day. But if you're finding that your child is having a really hard time at both of those times, it may mean that there's something else going on or something that you need to communicate and begin that conversation with your child's teachers. Through communicating, I think it's also important for children, once they do have the verbal skills, to begin teaching them to self-advocate, to be able to say, like, this is what I need, and give them the words and the tools to know that it's their responsibility to advocate for themselves, that you have their back and that you're going to support them and help them. But at the end of the day, if they need something, they need to ask. And this can start very small by like having them order their own food when you go out to dinner, or ask someone for something instead of having you ask them. But really teaching them kind of small to have their own voice and to be able to advocate for their own needs. I find this to be very helpful with my son, who is 8, who has ADHD and an eye condition, to be able to say, this is what I need, because I don't know what you can see, you know what you can see. And so you need to tell me or tell your teachers if you need something.
Yep.
And part of that is recognizing that children behave differently at home and school. What my child needs at school may be different than what they need at school, and vice versa. You're the expert on your child, and you know very well what they need and who they are and what makes them tick. But it's important to remember that each environment brings out a different set of behaviors. This is because they're interacting with different people. There is a big difference about being home by themselves and then being in a group setting with multiple children. So knowing that each setting is going to bring out a different behavior. So my son's eyes don't affect home like they do at school. And so I can't tell his teacher what he needs at school because I don't know how they affect school. So I really have to follow my son's lead and the teacher's lead on what they need, because they know that setting best. Just like my son has extreme tantrums at home because he's comfortable and safe at home and he is an angel at school. So I can't have conversations with school about behavior because they don't see that as a challenge. Where my daughter acts a fool in both settings, but I think that's just part of being a 4-year-old and being the baby. But she's still a good girl, I promise. And so it's important to understand. So as you're communicating with your child's teachers, of saying, like, what do you see in this setting? What do you see at school? When does this happen? Tell me more about this. And then communicating back with them when you're seeing behaviors and what that looks like and how that's manifesting themselves at home. So I like, yes.
I was going to say, just to add off that, my infant is in infant care right now. And I think even infants go through these behaviors that look differently at home than at school. Right now, we picked her up, what is today, Thursday? So on Tuesday, and the teacher was like, oh, she was really upset because everyone was crying. And I was like, oh, she's never really experienced like a bunch of people crying. And so all the infants were crying. And she said that she started like sympathetically, like trying to like either get sad or cry or like help people, and which was really sweet, but I've never seen that aspect of her. And so for her, it was a little bit rougher of a day than it typically would have been if she would have been at home with just her dad and I, because she was experiencing something different, and so it brought out different behaviors for her. So even the infants struggle with those, understanding that what the environment is and like how they should be acting in it.
I love that example. My kids never slept in the infant room because there was always something going on. And so they always slept at home very well because they were in their own room with their sound machine on and it was dark. And so the suggestions that I had for school about sleep didn't work in that setting because the environments were so different.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Some other examples of this are like biting. Children sometimes bite in one setting but not the other, or they look differently. There's different triggers to biting. My son bit me at home when I would be busy cooking or doing something where I wasn't focused on him, or he would get really, really excited. And that was his way of expressing excitement, is through biting. And so excited was his first real feelings word that we taught him at 1.5, so that he could express that verbally. And I would tell him to squeeze his fists and jump up and down and say, I'm excited, rather than biting mommy, because I don't appreciate that.
It's a lot better.
Also, yeah, way better. And kids sometimes bite only in school because there's 9 other toddlers walking around with them. So it's important to really think about it from both angles, talk about parenting philosophies and school philosophies, talk about the differences of environments, and understand that what your teachers might be saying might be different than home and vice versa, and have some understanding when it comes to that as well. Additionally, it's important to know your child's rights. So like I said, you're the expert on your child. You know what's most important for their needs, but understanding that there are differences between home and school. And some of that comes down to like licensing regulations and certain things like that. So an example of this is my daughter does not sleep at school. Still, she is 4. She is phasing out of her naps, but they have a nap time every day at school. So I know as a parent, my first step is understanding what the rules and regulations are around nap time. So I know that she is expected to lay on her cot for 30 minutes at the start of nap, and then she should be given things to do to entertain her until nap time is over. That is what licensing says is what a nap time looks like to a 4-year-old. So my first step is knowing her rights and then approaching it from that angle of, here is what I know nap time should look like. What does it look like on your end? And let's create some tools to help her be successful. So whether it's creating a nap time bag that goes between home and school that has toys that she can play with, whether it is having her help you set up for snack or fold laundry or do something that keeps her busy, because if she's not busy, then she's going to wake up all of her friends. And that behavior is a direct link to the environment. There's an environmental trigger that could have been prevented. So talking about those with her is with her teachers, but also knowing what behavior policies look like at school, getting a copy of the school's discipline policy. If there are behaviors occurring around toileting, what does the toileting policy look like? And have you created a toileting plan together? And so on and so on. So there is a QR code on this screen to our resource center, which is what I shared at the beginning, and I'll send you a link after this workshop. But we have some great pages on touring childcare, asking the right questions at the very beginning. We have a parenting a child with special needs page, and a lot of other tools for advocacy. Jamie, did you have anything else to share?
I think the biggest thing here is with that discipline policy is asking also specifically about their suspension and expulsion policy. I think that is something that as families, you don't think is even like happening sometimes in preschool settings or in childcare settings, but it does. And a program is supposed to have a policy on that. That is a licensing requirement. And so just to read it and to know it even before you enroll into a program is really important. You want to see keywords like they'll be supporting the child through strategies, they'll be working with the family through family engagement. But I think this is just a small part, and we'll talk more about all of that, but this is just a small part of knowing your child's rights. And one of them is that the program they go to should have a policy that prevents suspension and expulsion. For the most part. There are always extreme cases, but for the most part, they should be trying to provide resources within the program to help your child and to help you as the family. So I think that's the biggest piece on this when it comes to childcare specifics.
Awesome. So as you think about childcare and behaviors, we've mentioned a couple examples. What do you think are the most common challenging behaviors in childcare? So as a parent, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are teachers communicating with you? And then what do you think that teachers are experiencing throughout the day that they perceive as behaviors that are challenging? Sleeping and eating.
Yep. Those picky eaters can be hard.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's really hard to sleep in a group setting and have the expectation that everyone needs the same thing. And so when it comes to childcare, we see a lot of issues around sleeping and eating, not necessarily from the child, but from the teachers expressing challenges with them, again, because everyone doesn't need the same thing. And it's really hard to think about how you differentiate needs in a group setting. And that is something that I did as an infant toddler specialist when I supported childcare programs, was to help them identify individual needs for every child rather than thinking about the group as a whole. So
yeah, and I think yeah, absolutely. And off of that, just what Bree mentioned, not complying with teachers' requests, I think that's part of it too, is you have so many individual children that have individual needs, and sometimes the child may or may not respond to the way the teacher is presenting to the whole group and may need a little bit more guidance that is just a tweak to the curriculum or to the activity. And it's not something that needs to result in a challenging behavior too. So I think there's all these different nuances that you're working through in a classroom that definitely can cause children not to comply with teachers' requests, and then also navigating those difficult social situations. That is a day in the life of a preschool teacher and a preschool student, definitely struggling with that. Just trying to learn and navigate how they're supposed to interact with others. It's very natural. It's very common. And preschool teachers should be trained to work through those things. And most are, especially if you are at a high quality program.
Yep. So, you think about an infant, toddler, a young preschooler, and how much change happens so quickly. In the first 5 years of life. They're developing language and social skills and play skills. And these are all skills that are just emerging and developing. They have not mastered any of these skills yet. So they are still working on negotiating with peers, of understanding how to use their words to meet their needs rather than their body to meet their needs. They're still learning about what it means to play cooperatively with a friend and not just next to each other, side by side. And all of these, again, are skills that are just emerging in the first 5 years of life. And a lot of them are happening in the frontal lobe, that front part of the brain that begins developing around age 3 and doesn't really stop until the mid-20s. So there's a lot of growth that happens in that area. And that's where you see things like impulse control. And it's really hard. I am trying to lose weight, and impulse control is still very difficult for me. So
Right.
sometimes it's talking through expectations about, are we expecting the same thing? Are we expecting things that are appropriate for this child's age? Are my expectations as a parent too high? Are the teacher's expectations too high?
Right.
And then with infants and toddlers, sometimes it's our expectations are too low. We're doing everything for them and not recognizing that they're wanting to be independent. And they need the opportunity to do things by themselves.
I think that's a good point.
So the next step is really to begin to understand the issue. And we've talked a lot about this already, but it's starting with knowing your child, knowing your child's needs, but also understanding that your child's needs may look different in different settings. And then listening. Before we can start to work a plan out together as a team, and team is key here, then I need to listen. I need to listen to what's happening at childcare, and childcare needs to listen to what's happening at home and vice versa. And then to begin asking questions and doing your research. So that's where looking at those expulsion and suspension policies, are the toileting policies, biting policy, whatever it is, childcare, but then also what's typical for your child's age. And then sitting down once we've listened to the issue, we've done our research, we've asked questions, we know what our child needs, then it's time to offer some tips and ideas back and forth. So thinking about that nap time scenario of saying, like, I understand that she doesn't want to nap. She has FOMO, or fear of missing out. She thinks she's going to miss something. She always has. Her personality, she wants to be with the people. She's Ariel. COVID was very hard for her because she wanted to be out and about and be with the people. And so because of that personality, and given that she's a 4-year-old, napping is going to be a challenge where she may nap at home because she's in a room by herself. She doesn't want to nap, and then she doesn't want her friends to nap because she wants to talk to them, or she wants to talk to the teachers, but she can't be quiet because it's in her DNA to not be able to be quiet. So I know my child, I know your issues, we're talking through them, and then it's that opportunity to provide tips or ideas. Have you tried, X, Y, and Z during nap time? Have you tried a nap time bucket full of toys that are quiet that she only gets during nap? She really likes to help. Have you used that opportunity for her to help you do something? Maybe it's lesson planning. Maybe it's setting out snack. Maybe it's going and helping you get laundry from the laundry room. And then hearing from them the things that they've tried and working through them together. And sometimes tips and ideas aren't going to work. And so it's having that open mind to listen to the issue and maybe listen to it again. We tried this for 2 weeks. It's not working. What else could we do? How could we tweak this? It sounds like this didn't work. Have we tried this instead? And just kind of working together as a team to really understand the root of the issue and not necessarily the behavior in and of itself, but what's causing that behavior in the first place.
Yeah. So now it's time to really plan for and prepare for this parent-teacher conference. I recommend, with COVID, it's been tricky to get inside the classroom and to meet with your teachers face-to-face, but I think always having these conversations face-to-face helps just take away any unknowns of an email or like a message that might be happening through an app, through a communication app that you might have set up. So some of this is what Lauren talked about, but we're going to dive a little deeper into that. So when you're at the actual parent-teacher conference, the first step is to really, again, prepare. And I don't think we can stress this enough. I think you've heard us say it like a million times by now, but we want to prepare for this meeting in a way that allows you to have a stake in the meeting, and allows you to really collaborate with the teacher, and helps you just be able to say, here's what I know, and then take in what they know. So this can look like creating a list of points that you want to discuss beforehand. Maybe it is just like bullet pointing some ideas or thoughts that you have, but maybe it's more specifically asking questions. And these questions can really get to the heart of the issue, and then also can help hold the teacher accountable as well as you accountable for like the behaviors that are going on inside the classroom or outside the classroom, wherever they're happening. So some of these questions could be like, let's see, what kind of data have you taken on my child, like on their behaviors? What have you noticed happened before the behavior? What happened right after the behavior? What specifically happened? If a teacher says they're acting out, then try to get specifics, like what were they doing, where were they, and how were they doing it? Trying to really support that idea of collecting data, because as an educator, that's the information that should be guiding their curriculum and should be guiding how they're supporting your child in the classroom. And so if you hear a lot about data and information they've been doing and observations they've been making, you know that the teacher's really working hard to support your child in the classroom. And it's great information for you to have to either take to your pediatrician or to just gather and collect for future years to come as well. So really just take some time to think about those questions and ask those questions. You might even want to get another perspective before you go into the parent-teacher conference. Maybe that is going to the pediatrician and saying, hey, the teachers are seeing this. I'm going to go talk with them. What do you think, pediatrician? And sometimes pediatricians aren't going to see the full picture because they're just seeing like a little snapshot of your child in their office. It's just a moment of time. And typically they're acting either sick because they're there because they have a fever, like they're not feeling well, or, they're pretty composed because they're just there for a couple minutes and it's fine. But I know Lauren has a good story about this. Lauren, do you want to share about Charlie a little bit?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, my son has ADHD, and for a long time, we didn't know if there was something else going on or if he was just an active boy. And the pediatrician had never brought anything up because when he's in a new situation, he's very calm and clingy. He's very touchy-feely and cuddly, and so he would always be on my lap. So she was never seeing any of the behaviors that we were seeing at home and school was seeing. Because of it being a snapshot. At home, we were seeing these huge behavior outbursts and a really hard time regulating himself. Once he would get really worked up, whether he was really excited or really upset, he couldn't come back from that. At school, they weren't seeing any extreme behaviors. They were seeing more talkative, couldn't focus on his work, taking a really long time to get his work done. So it took a while to figure out what was happening with him, and eventually he was diagnosed. And so I thought, always good. We went for a medication checkup, and in that, he was his true self at that checkup, and he did not stop talking the entire time we were in there, and just bouncing off the walls and would not sit down. And so our pediatrician said very nicely, so is this typical? Is he always like this? I was like, yes. And she goes, oh, well, we need to up his medication. This is not typical. And I was like, oh, I just thought that was what, 6-year-old boys do. This, he is my first. I have a lot of experience in early childhood, but I just thought this was normal. And she was like, no. And so once we upped his medication, we could see a world of difference overnight of how he was really able to start to begin regulating himself and kind of thinking of a plan and carrying out the plan and being able to focus on his work at school. So that was one of those opportunities where behaviors could have been missed just in the pediatrician's office, but also she was a huge resource when she was seeing things to help identify them and help us problem solve.
I love that example because I think it just shows that like even outside of school, like we're advocating for our children in so many different settings and so many different ways. I think, when you go to this parent-teacher conference, you're going to prepare, you're going to ask questions, and then you're also going to contribute to this solution. And to know that what you suggest, the teacher might say, that's a really great idea, but it's not going to work here because of X, Y, and Z. And just keep in mind that it's a different environment and to work together and say like, okay, I understand that, but how can we modify what we do at home to correlate into the classroom? And then a big tip I have for parent-teacher conferences is just to get like a notebook or a folder to keep all the information in. If you have a notebook, then it could just travel with you throughout the years or throughout the meetings, depending on how many parent-teacher conferences you have to attend to. It just helps you just have a record of that. And there's also some other resources too, because knowledge is power. Lauren, I think we can go to the next slide and just talk a little bit more about the resources that are available. Oh, sorry, did I miss that one slide?
It's fine. It was on our one-on-one support, which you can talk about on this.
Okay, great. Okay, well, I can talk about this. So with the resources, we have one-on-one support and availability for meeting with you to talk about your needs. We can't, I guess the word is we can't go into the classroom and we can't tell the teachers how to support your child. But what we can do is we can meet with you, talk with you beforehand, process through it. Maybe you have a concern and you're like, should I even go to the pediatrician or should I even talk to my teacher? You can call us and we can have like a meeting on the phone or Zoom, and we can sit and support you in that. So please feel free to reach out to us. That we have our family information form. You can just fill out and just say, hey, I'm looking to talk to a specialist. Usually Lauren works more with the infant and toddlers, and I support more with the preschoolers and school agers, but we kind of blend too, depending on the need. One example would be potty training. If it's a 2 to 3 year old, we kind of tag team because potty training is a whole different scenario when you're talking about childcare. There's also other resources that are really important to just have in your back pocket if you aren't already connected. So the idea with First Steps is that it is a resource. It is free because it's mandated from the federal government to the state, and every child age birth to up to 3. So from 2 until your 3rd birthday, you can qualify for services if you're experiencing a developmental delay or a disability or a medical condition. And these services provide therapies such as speech therapy, physical therapy, and even occupational therapy. They also have some opportunities for mental health and wraparound care for the whole family. So this is a great resource to call if you are concerned about development. Also, that you have the special education, which is what you might know more about because of it goes ages 3 all the way to 21. And so special education is through your public school. If you do have a concern, you want your child to get evaluated, you would contact your school district special ed office. Usually you can find it pretty easily on the website for your school district, and you just contact them and they will provide an evaluation within 60 days. And First Steps evaluations is within 30 days because so much development is happening between the ages 0 to 3 is that if they went 60 days without evaluation, you could have already met different milestones by then for those little ones. But the older children have a little bit more time there. And so definitely recommend reaching out to them. They're free services and they help you just know whether or not you're working with supporting your child through building an IEP or being diagnosed with a disability, or if you're supporting your child through learning emotions and trying to navigate social awareness and other things, which all could be connected and then they all could be different. So I think just knowing. Another great tool is the CDC milestone tracker app. I was thinking of the CCDF vouchers there, but the CDC milestone tracker app is a great opportunity for you just to like check off different milestones you're seeing, because as your child grows, they're going to be meeting different milestones. I think language is a great example of this because, you know, they start by crying and then they start making some babbling noises, and then their babble starts having a little bit of a purpose, and then it keeps building from there to making words and then sentences and then having conversations. And you're going to see that, and this app will be able to help you track that to see when they're meeting those milestones and if you should be concerned. I don't know if they've been updated since, I assume it's been updated since so Bree asked if the app has been updated since the CDC made their updates. I am not entirely sure, but I would assume that if it hasn't, it will be updated soon. Lauren, do you know?
I would assume that it's updated. I don't know for sure, but we can definitely check. Bree, their website has been updated. Our website has been updated with the current milestones. So if you're not familiar, the milestones did adjust slightly to increase the social emotional milestones and to really kind of focus on the hard-hitting milestones that are really linked to developmental delay so that we can catch things as early as possible. They also added 2 different ages, so now they align with well child visits. And so some of the milestones have been spread out because of that. But I do know that their website and all of their print resources have been updated. I would be shocked if they launched the new milestones without updating their app too, but it's something we can check out. And I will check that out before I send the email, and then I'll include a link to the app in the email as well.
That's great. That was a great question. Thanks. Well, I think it's important to dive into now just like what is appropriate. Every child goes through, I guess they wax and wane throughout their development. They go back and forth. And so just to know what is appropriate for toddlers, what's appropriate for preschoolers and school agers. So Lauren's going to share a little bit about those toddlers who definitely have behaviors that are very, very natural and developmentally appropriate.
Yeah, so I love the CDC milestones as a way of really looking at development. It is not all milestones that they're going to hit, but it's the biggies. And what I love about it is it really looks at development as skills that need to be taught rather than behaviors that need to be stopped. So as we sort through the toddler milestones and look at what we should be expecting, I think it helps us identify those behaviors that like, oh, these are challenging behaviors, but I should be expecting them. Take biting, for example. Children bite because they don't have the language and the social skills to express themselves in other ways. It works for a toddler to bite. If I bite, you scream, and then I get what I need from you. So when we look at development as a way of saying like, oh, these are skills that I need to teach, or these are skills that I should be expecting, rather than behaviors that need to be stopped, I think it helps us as parents, but also as caregivers to really then identify where we can provide additional support or where we might need to just back off and say this skill is developing and how can I develop it? So for toddlers, I expect all toddlers to put everything in their mouth. They're learning about things through taste. They're very sensory oriented. So they're tasting and touching and feeling. So they're going to poke you in the eye. They're going to pull your hair. They're going to probably mouth you or bite you. And same with toys. So because of this, I ensure that the environment is set up in a way that everything can go in their mouth. So if we're finding that putting toys in our mouth is the behavior that school is expressing, of having conversations about typical development and maybe providing strategies around like a mouthed toy bucket or sanitizing or giving them a pacifier that they can use or a teether that they can say like instead of chewing on the puzzle piece, chew on this instead as a swap or a redirection. Also, toddlers cry, hit, and bite to get their needs met or to communicate because, again, they don't have the language to say like, hey, my teeth hurt, or you took my toy and I want that back. So they're going to use the things that they know and the skills that they know in order to meet those needs. And oftentimes it's crying, hitting, biting, hair pulling, having a tantrum until those other skills develop. So as we see language and social skills develop, these skills start to go away. My 4-year-old bit my 8-year-old the other day on the trampoline because he wouldn't let her out of the trampoline. And she had used her words, and so the words weren't working, so she went back to biting. That is still very typical. She was saying like, hey, you're not validating my words, you're not listening to me, so I'm going to find other ways to solve my problems, whether it's clocking you in the head or biting you. And at that point, I intervened and said, like, it is not okay to bite. I understand that you're upset, but let's think about how we could solve this problem differently in the future. And also to her brother to like, get out of the way, like, respect her no and validate what she's saying and move. But that also has to do with his ADHD and his inability to regulate himself in the evenings. So Jamie will talk more about what those behaviors look like in preschool. But then some other things that we should be expecting of our toddlers is saying no and mine. No and mine are both developmental milestones. I know as a parent, hearing your child telling you no isn't the best thing in the world. And depending on your upbringing, that may have been a no in your household. But recognizing that no is actually a really important thing for a toddler to be able to say. It's an easy word. It's a word that they hear a lot. And it's also a word that has a lot of power behind it. So you might tell your child like, hey, it's time for nap. And they say, no. You're like, I understand that you don't want to take a nap right now. So validating the no, but that doesn't mean you give in. You still have that limit, but it is nap time. I blame a lot of things on the time. The time says that it's time for nap, or setting a timer, or having transitions together as a team, giving those transition warnings. And then young children don't know how to share. So toddlers shouldn't be expected to be able to navigate social situations through sharing. So you're going to hear a lot of mine and a lot of toy grabbing and taking. So as the adult, our role is to really help them develop the social skills and the language for waiting and turn taking. Can I have that when you're done? Or saying, I'm seeing that he's not done yet. You're going to need to wait, and talking about how hard it is to wait. And preschoolers still aren't great at this. And I'm really not that great at sharing either. So, it takes time to develop. And sharing is just really not natural for young children. So here's an example of, hitting, kicking, and biting, some top behaviors that concern childcare programs and that often lead to a conference with families about how we can look at the why behind that behavior and then come up with the solution or figure out what skill is missing in that moment. So figuring out like, why are they biting? Are they biting because of cause and effect? They really like their response when somebody screams when you bite them. Are they biting because they're teething? Their mouth hurts and they can't communicate that to you, but maybe we need to delay taking Passy away until those 2-year-old molars cut through because they need something in their mouth. Or maybe we need to provide opportunities for them to have a bucket of teethers that they have access to. Are they lacking language or social skills needed to prevent this behavior from happening? Or do they not have the skills to enter into play or to play appropriately with others? Because cooperative play is just beginning to develop between the ages of 2 and 3. Before this, it's really onlooker play of like, I'm really interested in what you're doing, but all of these blocks are mine. And I'm not sharing any of these with you, and I need all 100 of them. Where as they get a little bit older, they can begin to say like, okay, I'm going to take these and these can be yours, or creating rules around them. The rules aren't always fair. I'm going to take 90 and you can have 10. But it's important for them to begin to negotiate themselves when it comes to that kind of play. So then based on these, we've identified the why. And then we begin to look at how we might respond based on the why. So do I need to set limits that send a clear message that it's not okay to bite? So you bite, I say no bite, that hurts, and then I remove you from the situation. I do this with like holding a child and they bite your shoulder. I'm going to say no bite, that hurts, and then I'm going to put the child down. Walk away. 2 minutes later, I might pick them back up. But I've given you that immediate response that we don't bite and I put you down. It can be as simple as that. Do I provide you the words that are missing? So when my child bites, can you say, you wanted that toy, say my turn, and practice my turn, your turn, back and forth through play. So every time you notice that we're biting because of that, we're not going to even talk about the bite. I'm not going to say, no, that hurts. We're not going to focus our attention on the bite. We're going to focus our attention on giving them the skills of skill building. Say my turn, or that's mine. We're going to encourage them to use words to enter play. It can be a word, it can be a sign, it can be a picture to say hi, or can I play too? Instead of, bopping their friend over the head, to be like, hey, you want to play with me? That we're replacing that skill with a hi. And so maybe I take this child's hand and I walk them around the classroom and we just say hi to everyone. Hi, 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 hi. I'm getting them used to using that skill to enter play rather than hitting or biting. And then providing a lot of sensory materials. So our toddlers should be going out, outside every single day. They should be getting a lot of physical activity and a lot of hands-on play. So sensory tubs and sensory materials and Play-Doh and water and sand and as many multisensory materials as possible, because they're going to be seeking that. And so giving them that appropriate outlet, as well as delaying pacifiers from going away until after those 2-year-old molars cut through, because when we remove passy too early, we can basically create an environment where we've created a biter.
I think what you said about moving is so important for preschool and school agers too. I mean, for young children in general, one of the best ways to support a child in their behaviors is to get them active, because they're able to have an outlet for that energy that they have. They are growing all the time. They are busy all the time. And they have an energy about them that just needs to be released sometimes. And that's by running. That's by hitting things. And whether it's like pushing on a wall or throwing a ball really far, that energy builds up. And without an outlet for it, you will see challenging behaviors. So if a program ever says, they took away a recess time, which is not appropriate response because of this need to release energy. And so it's definitely something to consider when you're talking to programs, like how much is he getting outside? Is she having time to run more than just a couple minutes a day, especially for your school agers who might be more desk bound throughout the day, and then they get to childcare and it's like, because they just had all that energy stored for the day. So just keep that in mind, because I do think, Warren, that's a great point for all ages, for sure. Now, your preschoolers, they are really taking everything those toddlers are doing and just taking it a step further and learning how to manage some of those things a little bit better. Your younger ones, your 3 to 4-year-olds, they're not as capable as maybe your 4 to 6-year-olds when it comes to preschool, because they're still taking on and managing and learning a lot at that age. That's when their logical thinking is really just like kicking in. You can think about like if you're redoing a room in your house and you've torn everything down to the studs, that's where your preschoolers are with their logical thinking. They're at the studs. They're just starting. So keep that in mind as your child grows out of the terrible twos and moves into what do they call it? The 3-anger?
Terrible threes, of course.
The terrible threes. Yeah. And so I've heard that 3s can be more challenging, but that's because they're learning more logically. And that's really exciting and really hard sometimes. So with that being said, that's all developmental. It's all appropriate. They want to please friends. They want to be there for their friends. They want to make friends, but they're still lacking in some of those skills on how to do that. How do I please my friend? Sometimes children will interpret that as like acting out during maybe a group meeting at childcare, because they see all their friends are laughing at them. And so now they're pleasing all their friends. So win-win. And so that's one thing that you'll have to navigate sometimes, and that is appropriate behavior. And so working with the teacher on how we can help your child please friends in a different setting or in a different way. They also are really emotional. Most young children are, but they have such a wide range of emotions, and they're learning more. Things like embarrassment. If you think about being embarrassed anytime this week or last week or anytime in your life, it's a very strong feeling, and it can make you feel sad. It can make you feel anxious. It can make you feel worried. It can make you feel not happy, I guess, but angry maybe, all at the same time. It is a very unique emotion, and your preschoolers are going to be feeling this for the first time. And so these extreme and complex emotions are coming out, but then also they're still learning how to name and manage the regular mad, angry, frustrated emotions too. So just as much as we can support them in that, saying you're angry right now, but you may not hit me. You're angry right now, and I can tell. So let's have some time by yourself. These are developmental things that all children need support in. Also, preschoolers still struggle with this change in routine. And they struggle more so than your school agers and less than your toddlers, but they still struggle with it. And if you don't have a set schedule at school or at home or in certain situations, it can cause your child to show some behaviors that maybe you weren't expecting. Not to say you have to have a set schedule or routine for every waking part of the day, because Lord knows I do not. But at school, it's important that your child knows that we're going to have a circle time together. We're going to go play. We're going to go outside. We're going to have snack. And then after lunch, we're going to go take a nap. Just this general idea of what's supposed to go on throughout the day. You might see behaviors on days like maybe fire drill days, because it's just something unexpected. The child wasn't prepared for it. And all of a sudden they have to go outside and there's all this loud noise, and that can cause behaviors. And that's typical. And then lastly, preschoolers are testing those boundaries. They are seeing how far they can go because their brain is developing really fast at this age. And it's starting to make some of those logical connections like, oh, if I try this, then this happens, and then this could happen. And it's just like a slew of cause and effects going on in their brains. But at the same time, they're very eager to please adults still. So use that for your advantage at this time. I think it's very, you can help them test their boundaries in a safe and appropriate way. But again, these are all things that you might see that might be interpreted as challenging behaviors, but really they're just typical behaviors, and they just might need a little bit guidance depending on the child. And then there is school age behaviors. It is, again, just a stepping stone. So we're taking everything from the toddlers to the preschoolers and now to the school agers. They are 10 times more aware of what people are thinking. And it's to the point where they can tell, like, by your face if you are frustrated, or you might be able to understand they're more empathetic maybe, or they are more nervous or anxious about things. It just depends on how they interpret those social situations. So knowing that, they also can complain more about friendships. They can really take their friendships on and be more intentional about them, but then also they can have more arguments within them. They want to be just like their friends, but then when they're too much like their friends, they kind of take a step back and want to show some independence too. They're really just learning who they are and trying to find that with people and without people. So they're just demonstrating this growing independence. They have this confidence about them that they can do anything, but sometimes because their confidence is so big, they can almost plummet and really have low self-esteem too, all in the same time. Like they might think they're the fastest kid in gym class, and they can run so fast, and they're so fast, and then one time they tripped and now they can never run again because it's the most embarrassing thing and they're no good at running anymore. And so it's just like going back and forth through extremes. And that's typical for this age, because they're just learning who they are and who they are in like their groups of friends. They are more able to express their feelings with words, and they mostly, for the most part, can say like, I'm angry. They might be screaming, I'm angry at you, but they can tell you that they're angry, or they can say like, I'm just really tired right now. But sometimes they just can't because they're still little. They're still not, like Lauren said earlier, it takes all the way up to age 25 for us to develop that logical thinking. And so sometimes their brain is just tired and turned off, and you'll see some aggression or maybe some attitude or whatever you want to call it, whining. That might come out when they're feeling really big emotions and tired. And then lastly, those feelings of embarrassment are even bigger now. They're really taking on those feelings, and just they might show some behaviors that are newer to you because they're taking on these embarrassing feelings. Like maybe they'll act out or get angry if you laugh at them if they do something wrong, because they didn't expect to do something wrong, so it was unexpected. And then also you're laughing at them, and that doesn't feel good when maybe like a couple weeks ago, like they tripped and fell and you all laughed together about it. It's just hard to know when they're going to choose to like really understand and take on that emotion. So that's all part of being school ager. That's all part of being a preschooler. And I think knowing these behaviors and knowing what to expect helps you as a parent or even a community member who's supporting parents to go into these meetings and to advocate for your child and say like, look, I know children this age are struggling with independence because they want to be independent, but they just can't. So I think that's what my child's showing you in their own way. And so having those conversations like that is really important, and we can help you with that. Lauren, do you have anything to add about preschoolers or school agers or in general?
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were reading through all of these things that it's no wonder that one of the big issues at this age is friendships, and that they're really struggling in these differences with friends, and why bullying can become an issue, or teasing, because they really care about what other people think. Where when they were 3 and someone was like, I don't like your dress, they're like, whatever, I'm still going to dance on the chair in my dress because I'm going to do me. Where when you're 8, you really care about what people are saying. And that one comment can make you never wear a dress ever again. And can really affect your self-esteem and who you are as a person as you're trying to figure out who you are. They're also very aware of things. So you can begin having conversations with them about, like, when this happens, how do you want me to approach you? My son has big emotions and feelings, and transitions are very hard. And when he's hungry, he has even bigger emotions. And so there's a lot of door slamming and screaming and I hate you and all of those types of things. And so I don't acknowledge them, and I wait until he's calm, and then I go and I talk to him about them. And he basically tells me, like, I didn't mean any of those. I was just trying to hurt your feelings because I was hurting inside. And I understand that when you're hurting, you want to hurt other people. And so we talk about how those aren't good things to do. But next time this happens, how do you want me to handle it? Do you want me to give you a hug? Do you want me to come up here when you're screaming? Do you want me to give you your space? What do you need from me?
Right.
Where a school ager is going to be able to really articulate or begin to think about how you can support them in a way that a toddler or preschooler can't. You might try to give them a hug and they're like, no. Where a school ager can be like, I don't want a hug from you, and understanding and respecting those boundaries while also providing emotional support.
Right. And I think too, that brings up the point, like at school, when it comes to your school age, or even at childcare in the afternoon, don't be afraid to talk to your child about it and ask them, like, how can we make this better for you? I think engaging them in these conversations, especially if they're older than second grade, is really beneficial for your child to see, like, hey, this is something that we need to work through, and we can, like, I'm here for you and we're going to do this together, as opposed to I'm going to fix your problem or I'm going to ignore your problem, which you're not doing either. But I think involving them helps them see that, like, and appreciate, and to really take stake in the problem or in the conflict or in the behavior, so that they can make it a change together with you and with the teacher. Because I think, just being there and supporting them is enough, but then also pulling them in is just another level of advocacy.
Yeah, they're part of the team, and they know that what they feel and think matters to the situation, and that if they have an opinion, that the opinion is validated as well.
Yeah, right. Well, we are so thankful to be able to do this for you today. This is a topic that is close to both of our hearts. And so if you have any questions specifically about your own child, or if you're a teacher and you have questions about how to engage families, or if you are a community member and you would you're like, oh, I have this family I know, I want to send them to you, feel free to email us. Our emails are on the screen. So thank you very much.